Have you ever felt like your happiness depends heavily on other people? That your world seems to fall apart when someone leaves? The truth is, the peace you seek lies within yourself, not in the actions of others. Today, you will understand why learning to live without dependence on others is the secret to a life of greater peace, purpose, and true freedom. And before we begin, I want to hear from you. What does it mean to live for yourself? Leave your answer in the comments. Let's get started. 1. Change the way you talk to yourself. There's a voice inside you that you can't hear with your ears, but it's always there, stronger than any other. It accompanies you silently all the time. The voice with which you speak to yourself. Sometimes this voice is calm and gentle, but often it is harsh, critical, and very demanding. The strangest thing is that this voice, which is supposed to be your friend, often becomes your worst critic. It doesn't matter if it was a small mistake, like forgetting your keys or being a little late. This voice, like an accuser, always finds a way to remind you that you failed, that it wasn't enough, and that you should have done better. And it does it without stopping, without being gentle, without trying to comfort you. If someone spoke to you like that, you'd probably distance yourself from that person. But because that voice is coming from you, you end up getting used to it and living with it, as if it were an annoying noise you can't turn off. Self-need isn't bad in itself. It can help you grow, improve, and achieve your goals. But there's an invisible line that, when crossed, turns that accusation into something unfair, into a punishment, and that creates fatigue. Because challenging yourself with self-love isn't the same as challenging yourself with the idea that you're never good enough. Here comes the most ironic part. We have great understanding for others. If a friend is late and upset, we tell them it's okay, to relax, and that everyone has difficult days. When a friend makes a mistake, we remind ourselves that this doesn't define the person. What matters is learning. But when we're the ones making mistakes, there's no compassion. The voice inside us changes, becomes more bitter. Suddenly we're talking about ourselves in ways we never would with someone we love. This pattern of treating ourselves more harshly than others may seem unimportant, but it affects our self-image and self-esteem. Now imagine your life being narrated by someone else, but not that critical voice. Imagine someone kind telling your story, as if Morgan Freeman were narrating his day. Even though you were tired today and had 1,000 things on your mind, you forgot your keys. But everything is okay. You are human. You think about many things. Yet you move forward with dignity and courage. That sounds different, doesn't it? How you talk to yourself matters, not just emotionally, but physically as well. The words you say in your head affect your body, your energy, and your motivation. If the voice inside you says only negative things every time you fail, like, "What a mess you are," your body tenses up. You start to feel insecure, not because you're weak, but because no one can grow under constant criticism. Marcus Aurelius, a famous emperor and philosopher, said something that still makes a lot of sense today. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. He wasn't talking about success or what others think of you. He was talking about thoughts, because the way you think about yourself and the world around you truly determines your experience. It's not what's happening in the world that affects you most, but how you interpret situations. And interpretation begins with the voice you use with yourself. Of course, changing this way of thinking isn't as easy as flipping a switch, but it is possible. There are small things you can do to change that voice. One of them is to talk to yourself in front of a mirror as if you were your own best friend. It may seem strange at first, but it's very useful. Look at yourself and say out loud what you would say to someone you love. It's okay, you're trying. Today wasn't the best day, but that's okay. Tomorrow will be better. Do it gently, do it with humor, and repeat the process until it feels more natural. Another exercise is to change the voice that tells your life story. Imagine the person telling your story isn't that critic, but someone who loves you deeply. It could be your grandmother, a wise figure, or even the narrator of a movie. Every time you make a mistake, imagine that gentle voice talking about what happened. Maybe you say something like, "You forgot the milk again, but you have 1,000 things on your mind. That's just part of your charm." And indeed, criticism is not the same as demanding. Criticism is like punishment. Don't confuse discipline with harshness. Discipline comes from love, from the desire to do the best for yourself, but constant criticism is born of fear. And living in fear only wears you down, makes you doubt yourself, steals your energy, and takes away the only thing you truly need to grow: self-love, patience, and calm. Changing that voice doesn't mean you have to become naive or stop trying to improve. It means treating yourself with the same kindness you would treat someone you love. It means being a home for yourself, not a battleground, and sometimes humor helps. Forgetting something at the grocery store isn't the end of the world. It's just one of those little situations that make life imperfect, messy, and deeply human. Don't talk to yourself like you're an enemy. Talk to yourself like you're a friend, someone who deserves affection even on the worst days, because in the end that inner voice will be your companion throughout your entire life. And you can choose to let that voice lift you up, not bring you down. If this is your first time here, please help me by subscribing and liking the video. This way I can create more content like this in the future. 2. Forgive, but do it for yourself. There are wounds that lodge themselves in the soul as if they were unwelcome visitors. They don't bother you all the time, but they're always there. Sometimes a smell, a word, or a song brings them back, and suddenly they come back with all their might. These wounds aren't just memories, they're chains. And the worst part is that we often wear these chains as if they were a part of ourselves, when in reality they're burdens we can leave behind if we learn to do something important: to forgive. But forgive by doing it for ourselves. Constantly thinking about who hurt you is a way to cling to the past. It's like watching a sad movie over and over, hoping the ending will change, but it always ends up being the same. This repetition, silent and painful, doesn't hurt the other person. It hurts you. Resentment isn't a form of justice. It's a poison we ingest in the hope that it will hurt the other person, but that only harms those who carry it. Remembering scenes, words, and gestures from the past is like continuing to give power to those who have already done what they had to do. Every time you think about it, it's as if a rope ties you to something that has already ended, but still affects your present. And the sad truth is, often the people who hurt us aren't even thinking about us. While you're tormenting yourself with painful thoughts, the other person continues on with their life, unaware of the emotional prison you've created for yourself. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean saying what happened was right, and it's not about forgetting. It doesn't mean you'll minimize the pain you felt. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can change your present. Because when you choose to forgive, you're not saying what the person did was right. You're saying you don't want it to continue controlling your life. Forgiveness is a gesture of self-care, not conformity to what happened. It's a deeply personal and intimate act, where the focus isn't on who hurt you, but on you, choosing to stop being a victim and become the master of your own emotional life. Psychologist Monica Gutierrez expresses this well. Forgiveness is a private act that liberates the person who forgives, not necessarily the person who is forgiven. It's not a contract with the other person, nor does it require their knowledge or acknowledgement. Forgiveness is truly something that happens within you. It's a silent liberation. Although many people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation, they are not the same thing. You can deeply forgive someone and never speak to them again. Forgiveness opens the door to your inner peace, not to renewing your relationship with those who have hurt you. Sometimes it's important to give concrete form to this symbolic act. Writing a letter can be a way to release everything you've been holding back, not to send it, but to put on paper everything you felt and never said. When you're finished writing, you can tear up, burn, or simply destroy the letter. Although this gesture is simple, it has a very profound meaning. You've decided to no longer carry this pain with you. You're ready to begin a new chapter without this weight. Because in the end, forgiveness isn't for others but for you. I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. This is a way to proclaim your emotional independence, a silent cry that says, I will no longer carry you inside me like an open wound. Forgiving is a shift in perspective. It's no longer about the other person, but about you, about regaining control over your well-being, your energy, and your life. Creating a sacred space for this process can make a difference. It's not just about writing a letter and that's it. It's about doing it in an intimate setting, away from noise, without screens, without distractions, where the silence carries weight and the moment becomes almost ceremonial. Because this moment deserves respect. It's an act of self-love, a way of telling yourself that I care enough that I can let this go. And then be still, to feel. Let your soul breathe. Let your body register that something has changed, even if no one else sees it. And then comes the elegant forgetting. This subtle and powerful way of saying, you are no longer part of my presence. Not out of hatred, but out of the indifference that results from healing. Because there are people who don't even deserve your hatred, but only your elegant oblivion. Not because what they did didn't hurt, but because you no longer want to carry emotions that wear you down and steal your life. Forgiving, when you truly do it, is not a gift to another, it's a courageous decision, a declaration of self-love. It's not always easy, it doesn't always happen quickly, but when it happens, something breaks, and something else is released. It's the prison of resentment that's left behind, and you finally walk lightly, freely, and at peace again. 3. Create peace and your soul with your hands. There is ancient, almost forgotten wisdom whispering through our hands. It is the knowledge of the simplicity of doing things without rushing, without wanting more than the present moment. In a world that values speed, productivity, and results, there is something profoundly transformative about pausing for no particular reason to knead a loaf of bread, peel a potato, sew with a needle, or draw a line on paper. Creating something with our hands is more than a simple act. It's a way to come home and reconnect with ourselves. When our hands are engaged with something tangible, our minds, which usually jump from one thought to the next, calm down. There's something very human in the act of touching, moving, and seeing its form change in our hands. When we cut a carrot, sandwood, or embroider a figurine, something within us adjusts. Not because it's perfect or because we're producing something magnificent, but because it's something true, and in this truth, the noise of the mind subsides. By focusing on what the body is doing, the body manages to silence the inner chaos. It's not about achieving a mystical or sublime state, but something much simpler and more genuine. It's about being here and now, doing something with intention, with the hands, with the heart at peace. We live in a time that demands productivity and visibility from us. Even our free time often becomes something we want to show or share. But when manual creation isn't tied to a screen or the need for approval, it becomes a refuge. In this personal space, where you don't have to be great or original, we can simply be. Do something simply because we want to, because our hands are calling us to create, because our soul, tired of so much stimulation, needs this moment to remember who we are. There's incredible freedom in creating without a clear reason, in painting without being an artist, in weaving without following a perfect form, in sculpting clay without knowing exactly what the outcome will be. This freedom is what's most lacking in our lives, full of goals, obligations, and expectations. By picking up a tool and letting our hands guide the process, we free ourselves from the pressure of obligation and reconnect with true desire. The desire to do things without expecting anything in return, to enjoy the process without worrying about the outcome. Through this simple gesture, a more authentic version of ourselves emerges. You don't have to be talented, you just need to have an intention. Hands don't demand perfection, they ask for permission. Permission to move, to make mistakes, to create without being judged. How many times have we stopped trying something we liked because we thought we weren't good enough? The pursuit of perfection has killed more creativity than anything else. But if we can let go of this burden, if we surrender to the act without expecting anything in return, we will discover something healing. The most important thing is not what we do, but the simple fact that we do it. Try setting aside 30 minutes of your day for manual activities, without screens, without interruptions, without a fixed schedule. Let your fingers touch the reel, soothe your mind with the repetitive movements, and rest your soul. It doesn't matter what you do. Cutting, sewing, writing by hand, sculpting, drawing, carefully cleaning something. Time passes differently, anxiety diminishes, and presence comes effortlessly. And in this state, you begin to hear what was previously muffled, your own most honest thoughts, your deepest feelings, and your need for pause. Creating with your hands is a form of active meditation, a prayer without words. It's not necessary to have an altar, just a space where you can be yourself without pressure, where you can make mistakes, repeat yourself, have fun, or even be bored. For in this intimate contact with simplicity, something powerful arises, peace. And not just any peace, but a peace that lasts, that settles in your body like a long sigh, like a gentle breeze after a storm. In everyday life, in simple things, lie the oldest remedies for our modern problems. We don't need retreats or gurus. Sometimes you just sit down and carefully peel a potato. There's more wisdom in a simple and sincere gesture than we imagine. It's not necessary to understand everything or solve everything. Sometimes simply doing something with your hands is enough to make the soul feel welcome. We're constantly running around, searching books, social media, and people for answers. But sometimes the answer lies in a quiet afternoon, in an activity that just calms you, and that's already a lot. Creating with your hands is a radical act of resistance to noise. It says to the world, today I'm not running, today I'm not being productive, today I'm simply here. And in that being, you find yourself, embrace yourself, heal yourself, because when the hands act, the soul rests. And maybe, just maybe, that's all we need. 4. Are you living, or are you just fitting in? There are questions that don't require many words to touch us deeply. This is one of them. Are you truly living, or are you just fitting in? The difference between these two things may seem small, but deep down, it's enormous. Fitting in can even feel comfortable, at least at first. You try to make yourself smaller and more discreet so as not to bother them. Adjust your words, your attitudes, your opinions. You look around and do what everyone else is doing, because being different can attract attention, and you know that can cause problems. So choose to fit in, even if something inside you starts to fade. Fitting in comes at a price, but it's not about money. You pay for it with silence, with giving up, with small betrayals of yourself that seem harmless, but leave invisible traces over time. You laugh when you don't want to. You say yes when you don't feel like it. You go places where your soul is no longer there. All of this to avoid being the weird, the different, the complicated. But when you try so hard to be accepted by everyone, you end up becoming a stranger to yourself. We aren't born knowing who we are. We discover ourselves little by little, but not always based on our truth. Often we seek ways to shape ourselves based on the fear of being rejected, of being judged, of being left out. Rafa Guerrero sums it up very well. When you don't have a clear identity, you start looking outside yourself for how to behave. Your inner compass is lost. You no longer know if what you're doing is how you feel or what you think others expect of you. You lose your balance. You live to please, to be recognized, to belong. And this, although tacit, is one of the most subtle forms of slavery. Here the thought of Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, becomes more than just an ancient idea. It becomes a guide. Epictetus, who lived through slavery, understood something that many free people do not. He knew that true freedom is not about what happens on the outside, but about what happens inside you. If you want to be free, do not desire anything that does not depend on you. It is a simple but powerful phrase, because a large part of our suffering stems from wanting to please, to be liked, and needing the approval of others to feel valuable. But when you look for it so hard, you betray yourself. You lose control of your own life. We've all done it. It can be something very simple yet revealing. Imagine a Friday night. You're tired, you just want to rest, read a book or go to bed early. But then a text comes through. Are you leaving? Instead of listening to your body, your cravings, your tiredness, you listen to the pressure to be socially present. You get ready, go out, smile without meaning to. It's there, but it's not there. You're physically where you are, but your mind is far away. That's not life, that's just fitting. Returning to life doesn't have to be a revolution. It's not necessary to quit your job, move to another city, or cut all ties. Sometimes it's just an internal shift. Instead of wondering what others will think of you, perhaps you should ask yourself, what will I think of myself tonight? This question may be uncomfortable, but it's true. Because at the end of the day, when you're alone with yourself, other people's eyes don't matter. What really matters is how you look at yourself. A good way to start is to reflect on your recent decisions. How many of them did you make out of fear of being disliked? How many were made to avoid being excluded? And how many were made out of your truth, even if it wasn't the most popular choice? It's not about judging yourself, it's about understanding and observing the pattern. Because only when you recognize that pattern can you change it. Changing doesn't mean becoming a rebel without a cause. It's not about opposing others, but about being yourself. Starting with a simple no can be a silent act of revolution. Not today, I don't want to, I don't care. And know that the world won't fall apart because of it. That true relationships endure, even when there are disagreements. You don't always have to be content to be loved. Real life doesn't mean defying norms to defy them. It's simply about having the courage to listen to and respect yourself. Act from your center, making decisions authentically, not driven by fear. Although it seems simple, it's very important, as it makes the difference between simply living and actually feeling alive. Perhaps we can't avoid all those moments when, for whatever reason, we have to adjust a little. Living in society sometimes requires this, but that can't be your usual way of existing, because you weren't born to be a copy of anyone. You became you, with your peculiarities, with your light. And true life begins right there, the moment you decide, even if only in a whisper, to return to yourself. Even if your voice trembles, even if it hurts a little, even if no one else understands, because you do, and that's enough. 5. Stay with those who give you peace, not with those who make noise. In life, just like in a video game, every person carries an invisible bar of emotional energy within them. We can't see or hear an alarm when that energy is fading, but we feel it. We wake up with no desire, with exhausted patience, no enthusiasm, and a sense of mental confusion we don't know where it comes from. Sometimes it's not physical exhaustion or the burden of tasks that weigh us down, but the people we get too close to. They're the ones with whom we share our most intimate moments, our attention, our silence, our feelings. Stay with those who give you peace, not those who bring noise. Because every encounter, every conversation, every constant presence either recharges you or leaves you feeling emptier, without you even realizing it. There are people who, like in video games, give you power-ups. They encourage you, make you feel welcome, motivate you, and bring you clarity. They're the ones with whom a conversation is enough to see the world more clearly. With them, you don't have to explain your silence or your tiredness. They don't make you feel guilty for needing a break. They don't push you into unnecessary drama or try to drag you into problems that aren't your own. These people add up. They boost your self-esteem, bring calm, and help you move forward. However, there are others who work in much more subtle ways. Their presence isn't like a storm, more like a constant humidity. They don't yell at you, but they constantly complain. They don't criticize you directly, but they never celebrate your victories. They don't hurt you with harsh words, but their disinterest hurts more than any criticism. They make you doubt yourself, they make you question things. Over time, you become more irritable, less patient, and more anxious. And that's the problem. We get used to it. We end up living with less energy and peace, thinking that's normal, but it isn't. Emotional exhaustion, when it's silent and constant, becomes a way of living on autopilot, where life no longer flows, but becomes a burden. Often these relationships persist not because they bring anything valuable, but because they've been around for a long time, because we've grown accustomed to them, as if they were old furniture. They're there, they haven't done anything that serious, and the thought of leaving makes us feel guilty. So we carry on. We stay in bonds that no longer support us, that even weigh us down, simply because it would be uncomfortable to accept that they no longer make sense. We call it a business, but it isn't. Because it's possible to be surrounded by people and still feel lonelier than ever. It's possible to share every day with someone and still feel like your soul is stuck in the corner, begging for help. The noise isn't always loud. Sometimes it arises from minor irritations, from unspoken words, from accumulated grievances that are never resolved. Stoicism offers us a valuable path here. This ancient philosophy, which many associate with coldness, actually places inner peace at the highest priority. A Stoic doesn't allow other people's problems to invade their mind. They don't get lost in situations beyond their control. Imagine a Roman Stoic with his tunic and calm gaze, who wouldn't allow anyone to enter their life and cause confusion, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. They knew that inner peace was the most important thing, and that it was their responsibility to protect it. Choosing who we live with isn't just a social matter, it's a spiritual decision. Pause now. Think about the 5 people who are most present in your life, without judgment or adornment. How do you feel after being with them? Peace, inspiration, relief, or tension, fatigue, confusion? This simple exercise can be powerful and help you see more clearly. Because we often only become aware of the influence others have on us when we look closely. Our body knows it. Our soul cries out in a quiet whisper. We just need to listen sincerely. 6. Listen to what your body tells you. The body has a unique way of communicating. It doesn't use words, but expresses itself through signs. It doesn't form sentences, but conveys powerful messages. When something is wrong, it doesn't sit still. It draws attention to itself. In a society that values productivity, resistance, and control, we have learned to ignore this deep and wise language that lives in our muscles, organs, and every part of our being. But no matter how hard we try to ignore it through distractions, medication, or even denial, in the end the body always makes itself heard. A knot in the stomach that appears every morning before work, a feeling of pressure in the chest when encountering certain people, headaches that recur without explanation. What if these signs weren't just physical flaws but emotional messages we've suppressed for too long? What if these discomforts were the unspoken words, the tears we swallow, the decisions we avoid? For a long time, we believed that illnesses were purely physical and that symptoms must have a clear and visible cause. But now, more than ever, we recognize a truth that ancient wisdom already knew. Body and emotions are deeply connected. It's no coincidence that our bodies feel the effects when we are stressed, anxious, or sad. What the mind can't process, the body stores. Like an emotional black box, the body stores the unresolved effects of our experiences, and when this burden becomes too great, it expresses pain. Lara is an example of this connection. She was always the strong woman who could handle everything, who refused to be weakened. Everyone around her admired her energy and efficiency. But one day her body began to fail. She felt extreme fatigue, frequent dizziness, and joint pain. The doctor said everything was fine, but she knew it wasn't. Then a therapist asked him a question that changed his outlook. What if your body only says what you haven't said for years? That's when she understood. She spent years suppressing her sadness, her tiredness, and her need to slow down. His body, wise and loyal, was the only one that couldn't continue to hide it. This sentence by Gemma Sanchez Cuevas has immense power. The body stores what the mind does not process, and he does it precisely. Inflammation in the right hand of a woman who can't stop caring for others while forgetting to take care of herself. The pain in the back of a man who has carried the emotional burden of his family for years, something he couldn't bear. Everything begins to make sense when you learn to listen. When you understand that the body is not just a means of transportation, but a map, a mirror, and sometimes a cry for help. At this point, it's also important to reflect on how we misinterpret Stoicism. Many people believe that being strong means enduring everything without complaint and carrying on despite the pain. But that's not strength, that's separation. True Stoicism, as practiced by Seneca, does not ignore suffering. It invites us to acknowledge it with dignity and awareness. True mental strength is not based on denying our feelings, but on having the courage to listen to those feelings, acknowledge them, and then act wisely. Therefore, body scanning is one of the most powerful tools we can restore. It's not a complicated technique and requires no prior experience. At the end of the day, all you need is a few minutes of calm. Close your eyes, breathe calmly, and ask yourself, where do you feel tension? Which part of your body feels heaviest? Perhaps you notice that you always feel pressure in your chest at family gatherings, or that your neck tenses up when you think about a work project you don't like. Your body always knows what's happening to you first. 7. Leave behind what no longer serves you. Once, 2 Buddhist monks were walking along a wet dirt road after a heavy rain. From a distance, they saw a well-dressed woman who couldn't cross a mud puddle without getting her clothes dirty. The older monk approached her without saying anything, lifted her in his arms, and helped her to safety on the other side. The woman nodded in thanks and continued on her way. The monks continued their journey, but the youngest monk, visibly uncomfortable, remained silent for hours. When they were near the monastery, he could no longer restrain himself and asked, "Brother, we shouldn't approach women. Why did you wear them?" The older monk replied calmly, "I left it on the other side of the river. Are you still wearing it?" Just like the young monk, many of us carry things we left behind in the past that continue to weigh on our minds. What was once a brief experience, a misspoken word, a mistake made, or a betrayal suffered, becomes invisible baggage that we carry with us every day. We don't see it, but we feel it. It exhausts us, robs us of our lightness, and prevents us from moving forward with clarity. Letting go isn't easy. What hurts us often becomes a part of ourselves, like an old wound that, even after it's healed, we continue to touch to make sure it's still there. There's a strange sense of comfort in what's familiar, even if it causes pain. We often prefer to stay in that uncomfortable but familiar emotional place rather than make room for something new. We tell ourselves, "I'd rather stay where it hurts, because then at least I know what to expect." But this choice, even if unconscious, is a way of not taking care of ourselves. We turn away from the chance for healing because we don't want to face the emptiness left behind by what we let go of. The past itself is not the enemy. What hurts us is not what happened, but our resistance to letting it go. We return to the same thought again and again, like a broken record repeating feelings of guilt, resentment, or regret. We repeat this not because it's useful, but because we've become accustomed to its presence. Without realizing it, we begin to define ourselves by it. We say, "That happened to me," and then we believe that's us. But we are neither our scars nor our broken stories. We are the consciousness that can decide what it carries. Seneca said it clearly. Many things seem difficult because we lack the courage to do what is necessary. Letting go is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of courage. It requires us to look at what hurts, acknowledge what it has taught us, and then let it go. Not to forget, but to give it the place it deserves in the past. And yes, emotional weight is much denser than physical weight, because while the body can let go of what it's carrying, the mind tends to squeeze itself tighter the more it tries to let go. That's why it's important to pause and reflect. What am I carrying that I no longer need? What thought, what memory, what resentment is taking up space that could be filled with peace? One powerful exercise is writing. Take a piece of paper and pour out everything that's been weighing you down emotionally. Write a letter to the person who hurt you, to the person who has caused you pain, to the person who is no longer by your side, and then burn it, bury it, or let it fall into the wind. This symbolic act helps the soul understand that it no longer has to carry this burden. It's not about forgetting, but about honoring what happened in a different way. Another way to let go is to change the question. Instead of obsessively wondering why you can't let go of something, ask yourself, what would I gain if I let this go? And the answer is often surprising. We would gain peace, energy, self-confidence, clarity, and space for new things. Letting go isn't losing, it's healing, reclaiming parts of ourselves that were trapped in old memories. 8. Consider solitude as an art. For too long, people have feared loneliness, treating it like an unwanted shadow, a void that must be filled at all costs. We've been taught to think that being alone signifies imperfection, that silence is dangerous, and that even the most superficial company is better than being alone. But what if everything we've been told is wrong? What if loneliness isn't our enemy, but an unknown place full of riches and meaning? In a world that constantly pressures us to interact with one another, learning to be alone can become an act of courage and personal discovery. Loneliness has always been considered something to be avoided, associated with sadness, abandonment, or the lack of something. But what if it were an opportunity, not a punishment? What if, instead of fighting it, we learn to accept it and use it as an ally for our growth? The first step is to stop viewing loneliness as a burden. In a time when we're constantly connected, loneliness seems to be synonymous with isolation. But it doesn't mean emptiness or lack of something. In fact, solitude is a space where we can truly find ourselves, without the distractions of the world and without the expectations of others that make us who we are. It offers a respite from the noise around us and allows us to hear our inner voice, which we often ignore. Great thinkers, artists, and creators understood that solitude is a way to explore the world. In moments of silence, they found inspiration. In introspection, they created ideas that changed the world. People like Leonardo da Vinci, Nietzsche, Virginia Woolf, and Thoreau viewed solitude as a blank canvas for their visions. True strength lies not in escaping solitude, but in using it to stimulate creativity, questioning, and imagination. Beyond creativity, being alone is also a way to achieve emotional independence. When we learn to enjoy our own company, the need for validation from others disappears. We no longer depend on others to make us feel complete, because we realize that true contentment comes from within ourselves, from the relationship we cultivate with ourselves. When we achieve this state of self-reliance, we find true freedom. The freedom to choose the company of another person out of desire, not necessity. Silence is essential in this process. We live in a world full of noise where the flood of information can suffocate our thoughts. Moments of solitude offer relief. Why do the best ideas come when we're alone? Because when we're free of distractions, our minds expand and deep thoughts have room to grow. Solitude gives us the opportunity to organize our minds, clarify our emotions, and discover answers we can't find in the chaos of everyday life. Traveling alone is one of the most insightful ways to understand the power of solitude. Without the company of others, every decision is ours. Every discovery, surprise, and obstacle becomes an intimate dialogue with ourselves. We discover the world through our own eyes, without filters or expectations, and in doing so, we ultimately discover ourselves. There's no better way to understand who we truly are than to encounter the world without the certainty of what we already know. Learning to enjoy our own company is an art that must be practiced with patience. Quietly reading a book, taking a walk aimlessly, or simply sitting and watching the sunset without having to share the moment with anyone else. These are the small gestures that show us that loneliness isn't something to fear, but a part of life that can be just as enjoyable as any other. By creating rituals that celebrate time alone, solitude becomes a sanctuary, not a sentence. It might be writing every morning with a cup of coffee, taking a walk at the end of the day, preparing a special dinner just for yourself, or meditating in the quiet of the night. These moments aren't simple distractions, but rather affirmations that our own presence is enough. Over time, these moments no longer feel like absence, but rather a sense of fulfillment. Loneliness is not a problem to be solved, but an opportunity to be embraced. It offers space for creativity, emotional strength, and self-knowledge. Learning to enjoy it is a gift that makes us freer, more authentic, and more complete. We shouldn't fear loneliness. We must learn to see it as an art. Loneliness is not a punishment or a challenge to be overcome. When we understand this, a state arises in which we can recognize ourselves, without the masks imposed by the world, without the influence of others, and without the need to conform to standards that don't match our own. When we stop being afraid of loneliness, we discover that true freedom comes from feeling complete in our own company. Thus, solitude becomes an art, a space where the mind can unfold, emotions find balance, and our true selves can emerge without fear. Accepting solitude doesn't mean rejecting the world, but rather learning to live more authentically within it. 9. Build your inner world. From the moment you wake up until the moment you close your eyes at night, the world within you shapes the way you see and experience life. No matter what's happening outside of you, true strength lies in what's happening within your mind and heart. Creating a strong inner world determines whether you are swept along by life's storms or whether you are the lighthouse illuminating your own path. A strong mind isn't born ready-made. It builds over time. Adversity is an inevitable part of life, but how you handle it depends on your mindset. If you see every difficulty as an enemy, it will wear you down. But if you see it as a master, it will strengthen you. Those who train their minds to withstand challenges discover that resilience is not just a skill, but a way of life. True mental strength emerges when you realize that life isn't something that happens to you, but something you shape with every thought and decision. Reading is a way to expand the soul. Every book becomes a silent mentor, offering you experiences you wouldn't otherwise have. Within its pages, you come into contact with brilliant minds that have defied time. Reading is not only learning but also transformation. It broadens your horizons, sharpens your thoughts, and strengthens your inner world with ideas that transcend the superficial things of everyday life. A good book not only teaches, but also awakens the desire to look within yourself. It is through introspection that we truly discover ourselves. Often, the answers we seek outside ourselves are already within us, waiting to be found. Understanding your life purpose doesn't happen instantly. It's a constant process of inner exploration. Ask yourself, what motivates me? What is my mission in this world? How can I live a life that has lasting meaning? Reflecting on these questions will help you find clarity in a world full of distractions. Imagination is a very powerful tool. Everything that exists in the real world began as an idea in someone's mind. If you can imagine it, you can create it. It's not just about dreaming, it's about creating new possibilities and fighting to make them a reality. Imagination helps you see beyond the immediate, push the boundaries you've set for yourself, and build a life that matches your greatest dreams. When you cultivate this skill, you become the architect of your own destiny. Internal dialogue, the way you talk to yourself, can be your greatest ally or your worst enemy. The way you see and treat yourself determines your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and your ability to face life's challenges. If you constantly criticize and belittle yourself, you'll be waging a perpetual battle against yourself. But if you learn to deal with yourself with understanding and determination, your inner world will become stronger, become your greatest support, your mentor in moments of uncertainty. Being present in the moment is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. The past is gone and the future hasn't arrived yet. If you cling to any of this, you're missing the only real moment you have, the now. Life happens in the present, and learning to live fully in it brings clarity and a peace that nothing can shake. The practice of mindfulness is not just a technique, it's a philosophy of life that allows you to find meaning in every experience, no matter how simple. Then there's the legacy. One day all material things will disappear, but what you leave behind in others, in the world, and in the memories of those around you will remain. Building a personal legacy isn't about striving for fame or recognition, but about living in a way that leaves a lasting mark. Ask yourself, what story do I want to leave behind? How do I want to be remembered? Every action, every word, and every choice contributes to the story you're writing. Make it worthwhile. In a world full of stimuli and distractions, inner silence has become a luxury few dare to explore. But it's only in stillness that clarity emerges, where the mind, once filled with jumbled thoughts, begins to hear its own voice. We've become accustomed to looking outside ourselves, in the opinions of others, in the approval of others, or in the constant flow of digital information. But true growth happens when we disconnect from all of that and delve into our own being. When you allow yourself moments of introspection, you discover the difference between what you truly want and what you've been conditioned to want. Meditating, reflecting, and simply being silent with yourself creates a space of clarity amidst the constant noise of life. In this space, confusion dissolves, doubts disappear, and answers emerge with a certainty that no external voice can match. But silence alone is not enough. The way you see yourself also defines your reality. Do you consider yourself strong, capable, and worthy of success? Or do you allow doubt and self-criticism to dominate your life? The image you have of yourself not only reflects reality, but is a mental construct that grows stronger with every thought and attitude. Changing your self-image requires conscious effort, daily work with affirmations and renewed beliefs. It's not about deluding yourself, but rather recognizing your own potential and acting accordingly. This transformation process isn't easy. Life throws obstacles in your way, and emotions can become internal storms that are difficult to handle. Emotional resilience is the ability to withstand these difficulties without losing balance. It's not about suppressing fears, anxieties, or frustrations, but rather learning to deal with them intelligently. Facing difficulties with composure is a skill that develops with practice, with the understanding that each challenge overcome strengthens your mind and soul. As the mind grows stronger through emotional training, it also grows through daily discipline. Routine is not a prison, but a tool for building your inner world. What you consume, the conversations you have, what you read, and even what you think when you wake up or before going to sleep, all of this shapes the quality of your inner world. Every day begins with intention or confusion, and the difference between the two depends on the habits you want to establish. Small daily actions like reflective writing, exercising, or focusing on gratitude build a strong foundation that supports personal growth. However, the environment around you also has a profound influence on this process. While inner strength must be solid, the truth is that our environment influences our mindset. The people you surround yourself with, the places you spend your time, and the stimuli you consume can lift or depress your spirit. Creating an environment conducive to your growth isn't about isolating yourself. It's about consciously choosing the energy you allow into your life. Beyond the physical world, there is a deeper dimension, spirituality. It's not about religion, but about connecting with something greater than ourselves. This can happen through philosophy, nature, art, meditation, or any other practice that gives you a sense of meaning and transcendence. When you connect with the eternal, with that which transcends the transient, you find an inexhaustible source of strength. In difficult times, this connection becomes a refuge, allowing you to resist, understand, and move forward. Ultimately, the journey is incomplete without a conscious closure. Just as dawn marks the beginning of a new day, night determines how your mind processes everything that has happened. Reflecting before bed, letting go of worries, being grateful for the lessons learned, and setting intentions for the next day are practices that strengthen your inner world. Mindful rest not only regenerates the body, but also prepares the mind to face life's challenges with renewed clarity and energy. Building a solid inner world is an ongoing work. It requires discipline, self-awareness, and a deep desire for transformation. When you strengthen this inner part of yourself, you realize that nothing in the outside world has the power to shake you. And in this stability, in this peace that doesn't depend on what's happening outside of you, you find true freedom. Your inner world is your refuge, your fortress, and your greatest tool for facing life. It's not about escaping reality, but about transforming it from within. Building this inner world requires intention, discipline, and self-awareness. And once you've achieved this, nothing and no one can bring you down. Circumstances may change, challenges will arise, and the noise of the world will try to distract you, but a mind trained with wisdom and purpose will never be broken. The key isn't controlling what happens outside, but creating an inside strong enough to withstand any storm. Ultimately, the world you live in is a reflection of the world you build within yourself. Make it a place of clarity, peace, and determination. Learn to talk to yourself. Have you noticed that our worst enemy is often in our heads? that voice that questions every decision, remembers every mistake, and seems to delight in sowing doubt in our minds. This is interesting because we spend our entire lives talking to other people, but we rarely think about how we talk to each other. And yet this is the most important conversation you'll ever have. It's not about being eccentric or crazy. It's about training your mind, learning to take control of that inner voice, and making it your ally instead of your worst enemy. Great philosophers, scientists, and thinkers have understood the power of inner dialogue. It's not just a simple whisper in your head, but a roadmap that defines how you live and face every challenge. And today I want to show you how learning to talk to yourself can change your life. Yes, you heard right, talk to yourself. It's not crazy, and it's not like those characters in movies who talk to themselves on the street and make strange gestures. In fact, it's a powerful tool that can change your life. We've always been told that talking to yourself is weird, a sign that something is wrong. But the reality is quite different. I'm not suggesting you turn yourself into an eccentric person, running through the streets screaming or scaring people. I'm suggesting you become your own advisor, someone who will always be there to support and assist you. To be clear, if you don't learn to talk to yourself in a healthy way, you'll let the critical, negative voice take over. Who needs enemies when your own inner voice is making you feel guilty? Let me tell you a story. Javier worked at a large company and experienced an emotional struggle every day. I would wake up with a sinking feeling in my stomach, afraid of being judged by my colleagues and disapproved of by my superiors. At work, I felt like everything I did was under scrutiny. When he presented a project, his mind was filled with doubt. Did I do enough? What will they think of me? And the meetings were even worse. Criticism, no matter how small, rained down on him like a rain of arrows, leaving his mind shaken and tired. Day after day, the pressure and the search for recognition exhausted him like a river gradually losing its water. One night, after a strenuous day, Javier was alone in the office. He looked at himself in the reflection of the window and, with a sigh, dared to do something he had never done before: talk to himself. "Why do you rely so heavily on other people's opinions?" Srenia asked in a gentle voice. "Don't you trust your own judgment? Didn't your efforts and work bring you here?" At that moment, it felt as if a thick cloud lifted from Javier's mind. For the first time, he realized that his biggest critic had always been himself. It was time to change the way we spoke internally. Without realizing it, Javier had changed his life that night. Stoic philosophers already knew the indispensability of inner dialogue. Epictetus, a great thinker, said that it's not the events themselves that trouble people, but the opinions they form about them. He taught us that it's not what happens that affects us, but how we talk to ourselves about it. If you constantly criticize yourself, if you doubt yourself, you'll never be free. But if you learn to calm down, forgive yourself, and allow yourself to be human, my friend, then life changes. Marcus Aurelius, another great figure in Stoicism, had a practice that still resonates today. Every morning he reminded himself that he would face difficult people, challenges, and moments of uncertainty. But instead of becoming discouraged, he calmly spoke to himself, preparing his mind for what was to come. The emperor taught us that positive and proactive self-talk is a mental training exercise, a practice for never depending on others again. Modern science also confirms this. Dr. Kirsten Neff has shown that people who treat each other with kindness and understanding are more resilient and less prone to anxiety. His research has shown that positive self-talk releases hormones that reduce stress and improve our mental clarity. So, as I mentioned before, talking to yourself isn't crazy. It's actually a powerful tool for becoming stronger and more independent. How can you apply this to your life? First, become aware of how you treat yourself. When you make a mistake, don't say, "I'm a mess," but say something kinder like, "It's okay, everyone makes mistakes, I can learn from them." So practice talking to yourself as if you were talking to a dear friend. Use supportive and motivating words. Take a few minutes to reflect out loud, or simply give yourself the strength to face the day. This habit may seem simple, but it has a profound impact. Learning to talk to yourself is an important step on the path to emotional independence. You don't need the approval of others when you're already your own advisor and greatest supporter, because at the end of the day, the most important conversation in your life is the one you have with yourself. The way you talk to yourself shapes your reality. If you're hard on yourself, if you constantly judge yourself and compare yourself to others, you'll live a life of dissatisfaction and anxiety. But when you learn to listen to yourself respectfully, motivate yourself and be your own support system, something changes inside you. Don't expect the world to be kinder to you if you don't first be kind to yourself. So the next time you find yourself stuck in negative thoughts, stop, breathe. Speak to yourself with the same compassion you would speak to a good friend. Because in the end, the voice that most influences your destiny isn't that of others, but the one that resonates within you. Since time immemorial, humanity has feared being alone as if it were a threat, a void to be filled at all costs. We've been taught that being alone means being incomplete, that silence is something to be feared, and that companionship, even the most superficial, is better than finding oneself. But what if the story were being told to us wrong? What if loneliness weren't an enemy, but a new and rich space full of meaning? In a world that constantly pushes us to be in constant interaction, learning to be alone becomes an act of courage and self-knowledge. True freedom lies in self-sufficiency. This means the ability to live without relying on the approval of others, without relying on the outside world to maintain our happiness, and without waiting for someone to give us the push we need to move forward. Self-reliance is a mindset based on dedication, discipline, and self-confidence. From a young age, we are taught to seek the approval of others, to shape ourselves according to their opinion of us, and to strive for recognition. But this constant search for external validation is a trap. When our self-worth depends on the opinions of others, we become vulnerable to the judgment, expectations, acceptance, or contempt others may have for us. True self-reliance begins when we understand that our worth depends only on ourselves. You are not more or less valuable depending on what others think of you. You are already enough, simply because you exist, because you think, because you own your own life. One of the cornerstones of self-sufficiency is financial independence. When we don't have control over our finances, we are forced to do things we don't like for fear of losing stability, maintaining unsustainable relationships, or constantly worrying about the future. True freedom begins when we learn to manage our money intelligently, when we stop depending on others for our livelihood, and when we ensure that our financial decisions lead us to a more stable and freer life. It's not about accumulating meaningless wealth, but about building a solid foundation upon which we can lean without fear. But self-reliance goes beyond finances. It also includes the ability to be independent in essential aspects of life. Knowing how to cook our own food, fix broken things, and manage our time and resources are skills that make us more independent. Dependence on others to meet our basic needs leaves us vulnerable and keeps us in a position of constant need. When we learn practical skills, we free ourselves from this unnecessary dependence and gain confidence in our ability to cope with life. We can't wait for other people to motivate us to keep going. Self-reliance means being our own engine and learning to ignite our inner passion without relying on external applause or rewards. True motivation comes from within when we understand what we want for our lives and commit to our own growth. No one will come to save us. No one will pick us up when we fall. We must learn to stand up on our own and find within ourselves the reason to keep going, even when the path becomes difficult. Our physical and mental well-being is also part of this journey. We cannot expect others to take care of us, motivate us, or make us feel good. True self-reliance requires the discipline to take care of our health, nourish our bodies with what truly nourishes them, and strengthen our minds to overcome life's challenges. Self-discipline is an expression of self-respect. When we take care of ourselves, we demonstrate that we deserve attention, energy, and effort. And when we become self-sufficient, we find indestructible freedom. Living with less is also a form of self-sufficiency. The more we need it, the more we get stuck. Society makes us believe that happiness lies in the accumulation of goods, But the reality is that by reducing our needs, we gain more freedom. It's not about depriving ourselves, but about discovering what truly matters. When we realize that happiness doesn't lie in material things, we free ourselves from the pressure of possession and begin to live more carefree, moving toward a life of meaning. True freedom comes not from what we have, but from who we are. No one can take away the knowledge, experience, discipline, or peace of mind we cultivate internally. Self-reliance is not synonymous with isolation. It means being able to provide for oneself without fear and living completely independently of external factors. When we understand that freedom is not a destiny but a way of life, we realize it has always been within our grasp. It's about taking responsibility, building a strong life, and discovering the immense power we have when we stop waiting for others and start acting for ourselves. Self-reliance is the key, and freedom is the reward. Loneliness is not a punishment or something to be overcome, but a condition that, when understood, allows us to recognize ourselves without masks, without external influences, and without the need to conform to imposed standards. When we stop fearing loneliness, we discover that there is no greater freedom than feeling complete in our own company. Thus, solitude becomes an art, a refuge where our minds can unfold, our emotions find balance, and our true selves can emerge without fear. Accepting solitude doesn't mean renouncing the world, but rather learning to live it more authentically. Emotional self-reliance is a journey toward inner stability, a transformation that frees us from the need for external validation and allows us to find fulfillment within ourselves. Many people spend their lives seeking the approval of others and building their identity through the eyes of others, unaware that this dependence makes them vulnerable. Emotional self-reliance is not the same as isolating oneself. It means developing a solid foundation of self-confidence and self-love. It's about knowing ourselves thoroughly, understanding our own feelings, and learning to care for ourselves without depending on anyone. Introspection is a powerful tool in this process. An honest and fearless look within ourselves helps us recognize the gaps we try to fill with the presence of others. Meditation, reflective writing, and connecting with our emotions are all ways we can strengthen our inner world. When we learn to enjoy our own company and be our own best friend, we stop looking to others for something that only we can provide. But self-reliance isn't just an emotional matter. Intellectual independence is also essential. Knowledge and education help us make wise decisions without depending on the opinions of others. In a world where information is readily available, developing a curious, critical, and self-learning mind gives us an incredible advantage. Those who learn, problem-solve, and adapt to change independently will never be captive to a lack of knowledge or the vision of others. However, it's important to understand that self-reliance doesn't mean we have to do everything alone. Resilience is important for facing life without becoming overly dependent on others, but also without being afraid to seek help when needed. True strength lies in knowing how to get back up after every fall and learning from every difficulty. It's not about turning down support, but about not being discouraged when it's not available. Resilience teaches us to trust in our own strengths and recognize that suffering is temporary and that there is always a way forward. Minimalism, in turn, teaches us that self-sufficiency also means living with what is truly necessary. In a consumer-obsessed society, learning to let go of what we don't need is a path to freedom. When we reduce our material needs, we cease to be tied to the things and expectations of others. True wealth lies not in what we own, but in the ease with which we live. Nature is our great teacher in this process. When we learn to grow our own food, purify water, and build things with our own hands, we regain an independence that modern life often takes away from us. Connecting with nature reminds us that we are part of a larger cycle and that we can live without being so dependent on the system. Returning to the essentials gives us a sense of control and autonomy that we don't find in comfortable city life. However, you must be careful not to fall into the trap of false independence. Sometimes the fear of rejection or arrogance leads us to distance ourselves from others and confuse self-sufficiency with self-sabotage. True independence doesn't mean living in isolation, but rather achieving balance. Knowing when to ask for help is a sign of intelligence and maturity, not weakness. A healthy sense of self-reliance allows us to choose our relationships based on freedom rather than necessity. Finally, it's important to understand that self-care doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey, not a final destination. Every small decision we make brings us closer to that goal, whether it's learning a new skill or practicing self-care. The key is persistence and a daily commitment to strengthening our independence without losing our humanity. Being self-reliant doesn't mean walking alone, but walking with the confidence that no matter what happens, we can always stand on our own 2 feet. 12. Take control of your life. From the moment we are born, we are taught to follow rules, obey, and seek the approval of others. They make us believe that happiness depends on external factors such as family acceptance, social recognition, and success, which are defined by other people. But what if I told you that this whole idea is nothing more than an illusion? That true freedom lies not in the things you have or how others see you, but in who you are when no one else is around. Life isn't a path marked out by others. It's like a carriage where you choose where to go. Yet in the end, many give up the reins without even realizing it. Why does this happen? Because it's easier to follow the current than swim against it. But today is the day you decide to take back control. Today is the day you start writing your own story. Let's face it, we came into this world alone, and we'll leave it alone in the end. So why this constant need for companionship and approval in every step we take? Stoic philosophers already had an answer. We forget that our true power depends on no one but ourselves, and that striving to please everyone at all times leads us to fulfill expectations that are not our own. Believe me, my friend, that is not life. That is letting others decide your fate. The Stoics understood that a life of emotional dependence on others is a form of slavery. Epictetus taught us that no one is truly free unless they are their own master. If your happiness and inner peace depend on what your neighbor thinks or what your partner wants, you will never be truly free. For Stoics, true freedom lies in controlling our emotions and decisions, regardless of what's happening around us. I challenge you to reflect. The next time you feel the desire to please someone, ask yourself, am I living my life or the lives of others? Marcus Aurelius left an important lesson in his meditations. He who needs little is closest to the gods. This lesson applies not only to material things, but also to our emotional needs. When you depend on others to feel safe or important, you become vulnerable to the whims of the world. But when you learn to live without needing anything other than what you already have within you, you become someone unshakable, like a mountain standing firm, unafraid of wind and storm, because your strength comes from your roots, not from what's happening around you. Modern science also supports these ideas. A study from the University of California showed that people who develop emotional independence suffer less from anxiety and depression. When we are not dependent on others, our well-being becomes more resilient to life's ups and downs. Therefore, living a life without dependence on others is not just an old philosophy, but a proven path to a more fulfilling and stable life. Now let's put this into practice. How do you begin to take control of your life? 1. Think about your priorities. Ask yourself, what's truly important to me? Am I living according to my values or just to please others? This step isn't easy, but it's essential. Looking inward and realizing that you've lived for others can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. 2. Develop your own value system. The Stoics teach us that living by our principles gives us freedom. Define what's important to you, not what others say. Perhaps it's discipline, compassion, or another value you hold dear. Make these values the stars that will guide your life. And remember, the world will always try to steer you from your path, but if your values are solid, nothing and no one can derail you. 3. Learn to say no firmly. You don't have to give long explanations or feel guilty. When you say no to what doesn't serve you, you are saying yes to your well-being and to what really matters. Ask yourself, is this my path or am I just following in someone else's footsteps? Think about it, my friend. Life is too short to let others lead it. It's time to take the reins and determine your own destiny. It won't be an easy journey, but it will be the only one truly worth taking. Take control now, set your direction, and live with the freedom that only those who govern themselves can experience. The world will try to make you doubt and push you into a comfort zone where you have to follow orders and fulfill other people's expectations. But now you know the truth. No one has more power over your life than you. You've learned that security comes not from outside approval, but from trusting your own judgment. Remember, every time fear tries to stop you, every time you feel tempted to give your power to someone else, repeat to yourself the words of Epictetus: "No one is free who does not own himself." Take the reins, move forward without fear, and live with the certainty that every authentic decision you make will lead you to a more fulfilling life. Because ultimately, all that matters is whether you lived by staying true to yourself. The illusion that we can control everything around us is one of life's biggest traps. We believe that if we behave a certain way, we'll be accepted, appreciated, and even loved. But the question is, are you making your own decisions, or are you just reacting to the fear of rejection? Many people spend their entire lives doing what others expect of them, losing themselves in an existence that isn't theirs. True freedom isn't about pleasing others, but about having the courage to be who you truly are, without asking for permission or seeking validation. Taking control of your own life, however, doesn't mean acting without boundaries and responsibility. There's a big difference between freedom and a life without rules. True freedom lies not in doing what one wants without considering the consequences, but in living with discipline and solid values. Stoic philosophers advocated not a disorganized life, but a life guided by inner principles that allow us to make decisions without relying on the approval of others. The true key to freedom lies in self-discipline and self-control. Only when we can control our own impulses and decisions can we truly say we are free. One of the biggest obstacles to regaining control over our lives is guilt. From a young age, we are taught that saying no is selfish, that prioritizing ourselves is insensitive, and that we must always consider others in our decisions. But what's worse, disappointing others or betraying yourself? It's important to recognize when guilt is being used as a tool to manipulate and hinder our independence. Often, the people around us use guilt as a form of control, making us believe we're responsible for their well-being or their feelings. However, everyone is responsible for their own life and happiness. We cannot live with the idea that our existence must be shaped by the approval of others. Another common mental trap is the belief in eternal stability. We have been persuaded that there is only one right path in life: finding a good job, finding a stable partner, and being accepted by family and society. But external stability is illusory. Everything around us can change at any time. True stability is internal. It is the confidence we have in our own decisions, the knowledge of ourselves, and the ability to live according to our truth, even if it contradicts the expectations of others. Detachment plays a fundamental role in this process of self-liberation. It's not about living alone or rejecting relationships, but about learning to love without seeking control, to help without being dependent, and to give without expecting anything in return. Emotional detachment doesn't mean being indifferent or cold. Rather, it means not allowing the attitudes of others to control our inner peace. It means understanding that our happiness doesn't depend on the approval or actions of others, but on our ability to steadfastly support ourselves. To find out if you are truly taking control of your life, there are some signs you can look for in your daily behavior. Do you find it difficult to make decisions without consulting others? Are you constantly afraid of disappointing others? Do you take paths that don't make you happy just to avoid conflict? Are you emotionally dependent on the approval of others? Do you feel like you can't be yourself in certain environments? If you identify with any of these situations, you may have lost some of your autonomy without realizing it. The greatest enemy of our personal growth is procrastination. Many people spend their lives waiting for the perfect moment to make a change. I'll do that later, when I have more money, when things are better. But the perfect moment never comes. The only way to change our lives is to make a decision now, even if it's a small step. No matter how small the gesture, what matters is the willingness to move in the right direction. This process of change is neither easy nor comfortable. It involves confronting fear, uncertainty, and even resistance from the people around us. It's like waking up from a long sleep. At first it hurts, but when you see reality, you don't want to go back. Growing up means stepping out of your comfort zone, questioning what you've always considered unchangeable, and rebuilding yourself from a more authentic place. When you choose to live independently, you will inevitably face criticism. Not everyone will understand your path, and many will try to make you doubt yourself. How do you protect yourself? Create a mental shield based on solid principles. Other people's opinions only have as much power as you allow them to. If you stand firm in your decisions, no amount of criticism can shake your confidence. But the greatest reward of taking control of your life is not only independence, but also inner peace. Knowing that every decision you make comes from within, without fear, without masks, and without the pressure to please anyone but yourself, is true freedom. Being authentic doesn't mean being perfect or flawless, but living with the peace that every step you take is aligned with your truth, and that is undoubtedly the greatest victory you can achieve in life. 13. Rediscover the joy of writing. Remember the last time you wrote without worrying about grammar rules, without thinking anyone else would read it. Not a short message, not a shopping list, but words flowing from you, without filters and without worrying about what others would think. Sometimes we forget that writing is not only a means of communication, but also a refuge. It's a place where we can be completely honest with ourselves, where words become a map of our minds. When was the last time you wrote something just for yourself? Not a report, not a social media post, but something to explore what's inside you. Believe me, writing is like a mirror that reveals truths we often prefer not to face, but these truths set us free. If you take the time to put your thoughts on paper, you'll be surprised at the answers you can find. It's like discovering a treasure that was there, waiting to be seen. Writing is powerful, not only because it helps you express your feelings, but also because it helps you organize your mind. Ask my friend Marta. We live in a world so full of distractions that our thoughts often feel like a raging river, carrying everything along uncontrollably. Writing is like building a dam that calms those troubled waters and gives you space to reflect and understand what's going on inside you. A study conducted at the University of Texas, led by Dr. James Pennebaker, has shown that writing about our feelings can improve our mental health, reduce stress, and even boost our immune systems. When you write, you not only relieve emotional stress, but also organize your thoughts, making them easier to manage. Think about it. Something as simple as writing can have profound effects on your body and mind. You don't have to be a famous writer. Writing isn't a luxury or something reserved for geniuses. It's a tool available to everyone. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor and philosopher, wrote in his diary every day to remind himself of what was truly important and to calm his mind amidst the chaos of life. He wrote not for others, but for himself, to better know himself and understand what was happening. How can you do the same? Take a few minutes each day to write without worrying about how the words sound or whether they make sense to anyone other than you. Do it for yourself as an act of independence and show that you don't need anyone's approval. Write about what you feel, what scares you, or what makes you happy. Use writing as a safe space to be honest with yourself. You can start by writing about your day, reflecting on what you've learned, or simply letting your thoughts flow freely. Do this without pressure or expectations, and you'll notice how it helps you understand yourself better and release inner tension. My friend, rediscovering writing is like opening a window in a dark place and letting the light in. No matter how busy your life is, there's always a time to sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and let words guide you to a clearer mind. Your story deserves to be told, even if you just read it. So start today. Take time for yourself and discover how powerful it can be to write down what you carry within you. Ultimately, It's an act of self-love and a way to truly know yourself. Writing isn't just a mechanical act, but a conversation with yourself, a bridge between what you feel and what you understand. It doesn't matter if your sentences aren't perfect or no one else reads them. What matters is that writing gives you the chance to hear your own voice in a world that constantly tries to drown it out with so much noise. So grab your pen, open your notebook, and get started. Because inside you, there are thoughts waiting to be discovered. Stories that deserve to be told, even if only for you. 14. What you seek outside is already within you. Sometimes we spend so much time waiting for something outside to complete us. We want approval from others, a perfect relationship, success, or stability, things that always seem out of our reach. We're convinced that if we achieve these goals, we'll finally be able to feel peace. But what if I told you that everything you seek is already within you? That there's no need to go further, just look within. Great thinkers have long said that the key to happiness and contentment lies not in what we receive from the outside world, but in what we discover within ourselves. Yet we continue to look outside, hoping that life will give us what, in truth, only we ourselves can give. Have you ever felt as if your happiness depends on something beyond your reach? As if the peace, love, or security you desire lies in the hands of others or in circumstances beyond your control? It's a frustrating feeling, like chasing a shadow you can never reach. But let me tell you a secret. What you're looking for outside is already inside you, waiting to be found. It's easy to fall into this trap. We believe that receiving recognition from others, finding the right person, or achieving success will make us feel complete. But here's the truth. This void we try to fill with what's outside of us will never disappear unless we learn to look within. How many times have you achieved something you wanted, but quickly realized the satisfaction was short-lived? Well, I've been there too. We've all fallen into this cycle. Now here's the interesting part. True happiness doesn't come from what you achieve or who's next to you, but from what already lives within you. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Search within yourself. There lies the source of good, and never stop searching until you find it." Fascinating, isn't it? Imagine your life is like a chest full of treasures. You spend your life searching outside, believing that happiness is a hidden gem somewhere, when in reality everything you need is already right there in that box. But if you never open it, if you never explore what's inside, you'll be stuck in an endless search. Believe me, what you're looking for has always been there waiting for your attention. Consider, for example, the Dalai Lama, a modern man who dedicated his life to teaching the importance of inner peace. He also knows that true happiness lies not in material things or the approval of others, but in caring for our minds and hearts. This reminds us that the path to a fulfilling life lies in inner work, in self-observation. So instead of chasing what you think you're missing, how about trying something different? Take time for yourself, pause, and reflect on who you are without the labels the world has imposed on you. Appreciate your qualities, which are independent of anyone else. Practice inner gratitude, and remember that what is truly important is already within you. Learn to enjoy your own company without fear of silence or loneliness. It is precisely in these moments of connection with yourself that you will realize that the peace you so desperately seek has always been with you. My friend, it's not about stopping dreaming or pursuing goals, but about understanding that you don't need anything from the outside to feel complete and worthwhile. The Stoics teach us that true strength lies in accepting and appreciating who we are, without being dependent on the world's expectations. Learn to be with yourself, not because you don't need anyone, but because you know that what you have within is enough. Looking abroad is an illusion that only distracts us from what's truly important. It doesn't mean giving up dreaming or striving for goals, but rather understanding that our peace and worth depend on nothing and no one. When you stop looking outward and start looking inward, you'll realize that enough is enough, not because the world tells you so, but because you feel it in your very being. True freedom comes when you understand that everything you need is already within you. So stop looking outside for answers and start trusting the wealth you already hold within. In this space of authenticity and self-awareness, you'll find everything you've been looking for. Few friends, big impact. Imagine for a moment that your life is a garden. You can fill this garden with many plants that grow quickly but soon die, or you can cultivate a few deep roots that are strong and can withstand any storm. Nowadays, in social networks where the number of friends is often viewed as a trophy, it's easy to fall into the trap of having lots of friends without realizing that, in reality, it's the quality of those relationships that matters. Do you prefer a field full of weeds or a well-tended garden? Let's talk about how having fewer but genuine friends can have a profound impact on your life. Imagine you're at a social gathering. There's laughter, music, people everywhere. But have you ever felt like, despite all the noise, you still felt alone, surrounded by familiar faces, but without any real connection? Your mind becomes cluttered, your emotions jumbled, frustration, anxiety, even sadness. Believe me, my friend, many people have gone through this. Now imagine being with just one friend, one of the few who truly knows who you are. There's no need to talk about unimportant things or try to impress anyone. Just calm, rewarding conversations and a connection that brings peace. That's what matters. Maybe you need fewer friends, but more people who truly make a difference in your life. Let's face it, quality will always be more important than quantity. Do you think having lots of friends around you really makes you happier and more secure? I have some news that might surprise you. The answer is no. The Stoics believed that true strength lies in surrounding yourself with people who truly enrich your life, not in making lots of acquaintances just to fill a void. Seneca, a great philosopher, said one should choose very carefully who one spends one's time with. And I'm not advising you to isolate yourself, but rather to be selective. Think for a moment about the deep conversations you've had with someone you trust deeply. Remember that evening when you sat chatting under the stars, or the peaceful cafe where your problems seemed to ease with just a friend. That's far more valuable than any noisy party filled with superficial conversation. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius said we should avoid people who bring confusion and disorder to the mind. He wasn't suggesting we stay away from all company, but rather that we should be careful who we spend our time with. When we surround ourselves with people who cheer us up, our minds become calmer and we find clarity. These few genuine relationships are like pillars that support our well-being, while superficial connections only create noise and confusion. Now I want to ask you honestly, how many of the people you spend time with actually influence your mindset, your mood, and your energy? Don't be afraid to be honest with yourself. The truth may hurt, but it will also set you free. Like the roots of a tree, some people nourish us and allow us to grow, while others only entangle us and prevent us from moving forward. So choose carefully who you'll be around, because your connections can mean the difference between success and failure. How can you apply this to your life? First, grab a pen and paper. Make a list of the people who support you and help you grow and spend more time with them. Then, set boundaries with those who bring only negativity. Listen, you don't have to explain yourself or feel guilty about protecting your peace. Do these people ever apologize for the negativity they bring into your life? Finally, take time to strengthen the relationships that truly matter. Organize meetings that create positive memories, nourish you, and leave a positive mark. My friend, less is more. When you begin to value quality over quantity, you will experience a powerful transformation. Your thoughts will become clearer, your energy more balanced, and your mind will find the peace it seeks. So don't worry about the number of friends on your list. Ultimately, it's those few genuine connections that truly make a difference. And as the Stoics knew, true strength lies in the peace of genuine relationships. When the sound of the party dies down and the noise disappears, only the voices that truly matter remain. It's not about how many people are around you, but about who is actually there when you need them. A small circle of true friends is enough to support you in difficult times and celebrate with you in the good times. So choose wisely, nurture those relationships, and remember, in the simplicity of a few authentic connections, you'll find true emotional richness. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and comment so YouTube knows this kind of content helps people like you so we can create more videos in the future.